Welcome, everybody, to the October 2024 edition of Call Tate Live, where I answer your personal injury questions. So, my name is Tate Meagher. I'm the owner and attorney at Meagher Injury Lawyers. Happy to be here with you today. Going to go over, if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. Happy to answer any questions you might have out there. Before I get started, though, I do have to say in today's video, I'm not providing legal advice. I'm not providing legal advice, and this is not an attorney-client consultation. Your communications with me on this live video are not attorney-client privileged. I recommend to anyone that they contact a lawyer in the state where their incident occurred about their particular situation. So with that said, I'm going to just jump right in. Again, if you have any chat questions, happy to answer those. Just put it in the chat. Happy to answer any questions you might have. To get things rolling, I'm going to answer a couple questions I've seen from comments on some of our videos. Some of them are just comments more, but I just want to reply to them. But there's a recent comment made by a viewer that says, if I'm doing 20 over the speed limit and someone in front of me brakes and I hit them, should I fight it? I have it all on dash cam. They brake with nothing in front of them. Well, my thoughts on that, it's maybe you have it depends on the jurisdiction for sure, in my opinion, too. So like Kentucky, for instance, no matter the jurisdiction, from a liability standpoint, that's going to be a tough case for the person that rear-ended them. Now, do you have a claim? You possibly could. Like, for instance, in Kentucky, where I practice law, we're a pure comparative negligence state when it comes to negligence laws, meaning, if we can show the other driver was at least some percentage at fault, maybe that's 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever the percentage. On a case like this, I mean, I think if you can get 5 to 10%, that's a good day. I might say, just in my opinion, because that's a tough case. But even if you can get any percentage, prove any percentage of fault against the other driver, you can still make a recovery in a pure comparative negligence state, but your recovery is reduced by your percentage at fault. So if you're 80% at fault, 90% at fault, your damages are going to be reduced by that. And so if you prove 5% at fault against the other driver, you can recover 5% of your damages, if that makes sense. It's a tough case, in my opinion, because every driver on the roadway has a duty of care to others on the roadway. You have a duty to drive in a reasonable manner, careful manner. In most states, they probably even have similar statutes to what they have in Kentucky, where you can't follow too closely the driver in front of you. Also, the fact if you're speeding over 20 over the speed limit, you should be able to stop in time, no matter if the driver's braking in front of you for no reason whatsoever. You should be able to stop your vehicle in time. That's the argument that I think would win in the case. But the argument to try to make in favor of this viewer would be, hey, you had nothing in front of you. You suddenly braked. That was careless. You have some percentage of fault of this accident too. Again, a tough argument to make, but something that, if you're in that situation, what you would have to try to do. It would, in my opinion, not be worth fighting if you were injured, only if you had catastrophic injuries. Maybe then, it makes sense from a time perspective and business perspective, money wise, to actually pursue. The facts would be better if they maybe cut you off, right before the accident, you might have a better argument there. But even then, I mean, if you hit somebody in the rear, it makes it a tough case. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Uh, I mean, the facts would be better, if they suddenly just cut you right off. But on to the next one. Um, Another viewer recently commented and had commented that I had a car accident and went to the ER. No bones were broken, but apparently I had a concussion the whole time, and the concussion was severe enough to make me pass out and lose feeling partially on the left side of my body. Any idea how much that is worth? When talking about case values, there's so many factors involved. One of the biggest is jurisdiction. So I don't know where this viewer's from, um, but say they're from Los Angeles, California, or Chicago, Illinois. Those are two big cities where historically jury verdicts in those areas, probably due to the cost of living in those areas, is much higher than a place like, for instance, where I practice law, Kentucky. We don't have as any cities as big as Chicago or Los Angeles. My city, and the cost of living in my state is much more affordable. So I think juries look at that, and their concept of money is completely different in those areas. So traditionally, in those, you know, places where the cost of living seems to be a bit higher, the jury verdicts seem to be higher. And as a result of that, settlements are higher in those potential areas because, the jury verdicts are potentially higher in those areas. And insurance companies know that when they're valuing cases. So that's a huge factor. Um, Also, obviously, liability. He just said he was in a car accident. I don't know what the liability situation it is in this case, but liability is huge. I mean, the three biggest factors in any injury case are liability, damages. How much were your damages? He had a concussion here. That could be pretty significant, especially, which I'll talk about here in a minute, if you end up getting diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury. And then the third biggest big factor in any injury case is insurance. How much insurance is available to you, or is it like a big corporation that you're going after? In your case, that has sufficient funds to pay, you know, excuse me, on your injury claim. The So getting back to the concussion, anytime you sustain a concussion in an accident, you really want to get checked out by some type of whether it's a neurosurgeon, neurologist. You really want to get checked out by one that will also perform testing on you to determine if you have a mild, at least a mild traumatic brain injury, maybe even more significant than that in some situations. But there's testing that can be done via a VNG that can determine whether or not you have at least a mild traumatic brain injury. These often get undiagnosed in cases because injury victims don't go through the steps to properly get diagnosed for this condition. And if you are ultimately diagnosed with a mild traumatic brain injury, it can significantly improve the value of your case. So, anytime you've sustained a concussion or just any type of, I mean, if you've been in a car accident that's at least moderate, there's a very good chance you've suffered some type of, head injury in that accident. Get checked out. You might not even realize you have, some of the symptoms that might be associated with a mild traumatic brain injury, but it's very important to get checked out by a neuro if you're going through that situation. So, to answer his question, I can't really, when it comes to case values, what I always tell my clients is I could probably give you a range of about what, in my legal opinion, based on my years of being in this industry. I previously worked for insurance companies, defending injury claims in court. Now represent injury victims. But when it comes to case values, I can usually, once I start diving, I have to see your case. I feel like I can give a good opinion, and that's all it is, an opinion, because we're trying to determine what a jury of strangers would award you in your injury case. And nobody can 100% accurately predict that, but based on past jury verdicts in similar cases, in the jurisdiction, we can try to form, at least a range of what that case is potentially worth, and I can give you, my opinion as to what that range is and what might be a good settlement in your case. So to answer this individual viewer's question, I would highly recommend you lean on your injury lawyer in your state, if you've retained one, to form an opinion as to what that case might be worth. Um, so kind of whether or not any settlement offered your way is a good offer or not. So got one more comment from a viewer I kind of wanted to go over. And it was a very simple one, a recent one we got. It just said, my attorney told me to give a recorded statement. You may have seen some of my videos. I tell my clients not to give a recorded statement. I don't think it's a good idea in virtually any client or injury victim situation. You're not required to give the other driver's insurance company a recorded statement. They want you to give a recorded statement so that you might say something that can be used against you later down the road in your case. Um, like if your case goes to court, but that's why they want you to give it. It's, you know, rarely would a recorded statement ever help you in your case. You're not required to give a recorded statement. Let your attorney argue, the facts of the case for you without giving a recorded statement. Um, Now, if your own insurance company requests to take your recorded statement, you're probably required to do that pursuant to the terms of your insurance policy. That's fine. I would highly suggest, if that happens, though, that you have an attorney there with you on the recorded statement so that the insurance company doesn't ask you any questions that they're not allowed to ask during that recorded statement, even if it's your own insurance company. Um, but again, my advice to any of my clients is to never give a recorded statement. I never think it's a good idea. It can only be used against you later down, and it's really not going to help you in your case. Um, the So in my opinion, it is, now some attorneys might disagree with me on this, but in my opinion, it is not a good idea to give the other driver's insurance company a recorded statement. So anyways, I don't think I have any other questions to ask in today's live recording, but I'll be back again next month. If you have any questions, I'm going to try to do these on Tuesdays, maybe about the second Tuesday of each month. Happy to answer anybody's questions that they might have out there about their injury case. But again, we'll put this out there that in today's video, I was not providing any legal advice, and this is not an attorney-client consultation. Any communications with me on this live video are not attorney-client privilege communications. I recommend to anyone that they contact a lawyer in the state where their incident occurred about their particular situation. So that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching Call Tate Live. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to always ask one, comment on any of my videos. If you have any questions, I try to answer every single one of those that come in. Um, and, you know, look for my next live video next month. Thanks and see you next time.